Good morning and welcome to another Lynnwood Times exclusive interview. Joining me today is Snohomish County's 33rd Sheriff, Susanna Johnson. Susanna Johnson, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Happy Valentine's Day as well.
Happy Valentine's Day, that's right.
Do you have any big plans with your family later?
Oh, sure, after work tonight, so
Nice.
whenever I get off, yeah.
Awesome. So we're just going to kick things off. So you were officially sworn in as Snohomish County's new sheriff on January 2nd. So what did the first month look like? And if you remember, what was the first thing that you did as sheriff?
Thank you for that question, and it was very exciting. I still feel like I'm floating from that day. Technically, officially, I had to take my oath before January 1st, but we had the ceremonial oath on the 2nd. And, you know, even though it's been a month, that first month you talked about, for 6 weeks prior to that, our team was working for transition. So from the moment they called the election until I actually took my oath, we were preparing and transitioning with the outgoing administration and making sure we could hit the ground running. So it feels almost like it's been 6 months, but in a great way. Some of the things we did right away was we were looking at the importance of staffing and what adjustments we needed to do to make sure our line folks were getting the support they needed. We did some early looks at budget. We had to do some tweaks right away. But most importantly for me, as the newly elected, was going out on a listening tour, for lack of a better term. Been out meeting with community members, community leaders, business leaders, as far as also my peers in other agencies, school district superintendents. So it's been great, and listening to what's important to people to help me hone in. I know we'll talk about priorities, but that community component is the most important piece. So instead of coming in and firmly deciding everything we're going to do, we have our vision, and now we need to hear what's important to our people that we support.
Definitely. So you served with the sheriff's office previously, beginning back in the 90s. You worked as a K-9 handler, a patrol deputy, detective, SWAT squad leader, detective sergeant, lots of different roles. So how does it feel to be back after all these years, and has it changed in any way since you were here last?
It is great to be home. I've used that term, and that's exactly what it feels like. It feels so right. And I never anticipated ever to run for a public office, much less running for sheriff. Never anticipated that, more than 2 years ago. But it definitely feels like this is where I always was meant to be, and to come back home. Probably the most powerful piece is the fact that because I've had all those experiences, which were all blessings. When you come into law enforcement, you never know where your path will take you, and the opportunities that come and go, windows open and close all the time. And the fact that I've had an ability or the opportunity to do all those things, I feel like helps me with my responsibilities now. Not only do I understand the work of the different divisions and specialties, which should make me better equipped to provide the resources those units need, but because I have the relationships throughout the agency from over the years, it's helped me hit the ground running. And it is really all about the people that are in this organization now. If you notice my appointed staff, there's a total of 15 appointees, all come from within the sheriff's office. So I think it was really important to take the existing experience so that we can hit the ground running. But yeah, what a blessing to be back.
How do you think serving in all those roles that I just mentioned gives you a different understanding when working with your staff members here at the sheriff's office?
I think that one of the benefits is working in different components and understanding how one thing impacts the other. So if I make a staffing decision or a budgetary decision or go out and meet with a community group, knowing how the work is done and the manner in which we do it, not only the policies and procedures, but the impacts, the downstream impacts, because it would be very easy without that experience to make a decision and not understand how that's going to affect our service delivery on the end, or the ability of that corrections deputy to do that work, or our law enforcement secretary in their communication with the public. So when you've done the work and in many cases struggled for those resources, it's easier to prioritize and do things in a manner where you don't have to take a step back and fix it. Hopefully understanding the influences and the impacts it will make me more efficient in the decisions I make.
I mean, you actually retired from public safety after serving for 30 years, just about. So what was the biggest driver that led you back to returning?
You know, after 30 years, I really thought I was done. I mean, I was tired, if I was going to be honest. Still loved the work, but I just thought it was my time. And I did retire. I retired for 5 months. I even drew on my pension. And I missed all the things that draw us in. And I'm sure you're drawn into your profession. I missed the service component is the easiest thing to describe, you know, being out here and serving our community, but also being part of a team and being part of solutions. We've watched our society the last several years and the struggles with it. And the first thing people want to do is roll up their sleeves and go help. And I felt like I had more to give. And it was a great opportunity for me to come back into law enforcement. It's kind of unique. So to come back in law enforcement, generally I would have to start again as a deputy sheriff. And I'd worked my way from a deputy sheriff up to number 3 at the sheriff's office when I retired. And the Bothell Police Department is a great agency. And they encouraged me to do some ride-alongs with them. And they had an opportunity for what they call a lateral captain spot. So I competed against 5 others eventually and was honored to get that position. Eventually, when I left Bothell after 3 years, I got to be the deputy chief there. But some agencies sort of had this void in their management ranks, and so that was great for me. I learned a lot from that, and it reminded me, I feel like it was a brand new career. I feel like I have another 30 to give, so that 5-month break was perfect for me.
That's awesome. And speaking of your time as chief with Bothell, what would you say is the biggest difference between working in a municipal agency compared to county?
Yeah, there are some differences. And just for clarification, so I was the deputy chief, which is just number 2 there. So I worked for a great chief at the Bothell Police Department. There are some significant differences, which I'm actually so glad I had this opportunity to do both work, not only just obviously the geographical areas that it serves. First and foremost is resources. There is a huge difference between the resources a municipality can have with their police department and their access to funds and resources and a county sheriff's office. It's just the way it is. And the abundance of resources provided opportunities for more community outreach, staffing models where you can have enough officers to patrol areas for more effective policing. You have to be a little more creative when you work for a county sheriff's office. For sure, there's more opportunity because we have more responsibilities such as search and rescue and other components like SWAT and K9 tend to be more prolific on a larger scale. So there's great opportunities working for a sheriff's office. But coming back to municipalities, it's also the structure. So of course, right now I'm an elected sheriff, so I'll have my own budget, my own responsibilities. When you work for a municipality, you have to, anything you want to gain or changes you need to make, depending on the structure, you're going through a city council, you're going through a city manager, maybe going through a mayor. The last piece that I think is sort of significant, and a lot of people are talking about these things right now, is the appointment process. So I don't know what the current studies show, but historically studies had shown for a police chief, average tenure can be 2.5 to 3 years, which means you have a lot of turnover. You really report to one person generally. Sometimes it's a mayor or city manager, and that's who you work for. So if that's one person wants to change direction, just like that, you have a new chief. When you understand culture in an agency, it takes a long time. I know we'll talk about initiatives here in a little bit. It takes a long time to do and implement programs. So if you have that turnover, so, city chiefs sometimes have it hard. In this area, our chiefs have been around for a while. I mean, we just had some turnover, but when you compare municipality to a sheriff's office, as an elected, it's a 4-year term. And the part that's interesting is there is a lot of talk of, in different counties, to look at King County. They just went to an appointed sheriff. So instead of necessarily working for your entire community where they decide whether or not you're doing a good job or you representing them appropriately, it could be a council of 5 or maybe a majority, maybe just one person tips that council and decides who's running things. So I'm an advocate of elected. I mean, because I'm sitting here probably, that sounds biased, but those are some significant differences between a municipality and a sheriff. I'll have an opportunity to do larger programs because I know I'll have 4 years to work on it.
We have to talk about your FBI National Academy. You're a decorated graduate of the National Academy, which is one of the most sought after executive law enforcement training in the world, really.
Yeah.
Would you mind speaking on your experiences there? Namely, what was one of your biggest takeaways, and how do you plan to implement that now that you're sheriff?
That's a great program. That's true. It's internationally known. It is the hardest one to get into. 0.5% of law enforcement executives have an opportunity to go. I was really blessed to have an opportunity to go, and the quality of the leaders you get to be around. From the program, what they're looking for is they teach you certainly best practices. That's always important, especially in law enforcement. The trends and changes that come through public safety is mind-boggling at times, how quickly things shift. The FBI National Academy teaches us the importance of professionalism, teaches us the importance of having these relationships. When you are a National Academy graduate, you have leaders from around the country and around the world on speed dial on your phone. And we always take a call from another graduate. So those resources, when things are suddenly shifting and we have something called COVID shows up that we've never even anticipated, and how in the world do we do law enforcement under those circumstances? We can call each other and what are you doing? What am I doing? So not only is it for established practices, but emerging trends, you can run ideas across the most amazing people that are doing this job. I'm not even sure how I got in. Honestly, I feel very fortunate that I got in. But the other things they talk about certainly is relationships with our community. I mean, they preach to a point of, we're empowered by the people. It's a social contract. Not only are we a part of our own communities, but that serving the community is also, that power can come and go. And I think we've seen that since the murder of George Floyd. We need to be completely aware of what police legitimacy is and not lose track of that. And so it keeps you grounded on what's important while also looking at emerging trends. So for me, I think when we do talk about priorities, you're going to hear things like organizational resiliency. My responsibility, I'm but the placeholder in this office. That chair is not my chair. I'm just sitting in it for a period of time. It's always that succession planning. And what are we going to do tomorrow? And so it's that forward-looking, but for that opportunity to go to that academy and understand and talk to people who have dealt with organizational change and how to shift culture. It's a lot of tools that I have at my disposal, so I feel very fortunate to have them.
So what is in your opinion, biggest public safety issue that Snohomish County faces as of late? And what's your strategic plan to tackle it?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of things we can talk about individually. If I were to pick a topic, I would use the title behavioral health, because that includes mental health. It includes certainly housing instability, but also obviously the big one is the opioid epidemic and substance use disorder. I worked narcotics as a detective, an undercover detective, for 8.5 years in my career, and we have a local task force, obviously, that's regional, that's done some amazing things, and I've never seen a drug like we're looking at now, obviously with fentanyl, and just how toxic it is and what's happening to our community. It's overwhelming, right? It's overwhelming all of us, government, our social programs, so behavioral health. What's important for me is to look at not only our existing programs and how to leverage them, but absolutely got to use our partners. We started off by talking about limitations, especially in county government, and also knowing our place. One of the things I've learned in law enforcement the last few years is that it's no longer called really law enforcement as much as it's public safety. Understanding our role doesn't mean we only get involved when it comes to an arrest, like arresting somebody under the influence. I think we realize collectively, if we were to take just substance use disorder for a moment, that incarcerating is not the solution, right? But it is a tool we need to use. We tried in this state after the Blake decision for a couple of years for people to self-refer for treatment, right? This is just an example. And what we learned through that is because it is addiction, people won't self-refer. So there is a law enforcement component that we are now implementing, trying to get, we make that arrest, that interrupts that cycle, and our intention is hoping they'll go into treatment, right? There are some services set up to hopefully change the lives of those people that are addicted, and understanding how they got in those positions. For me and the largest law enforcement agency in Snohomish County, it means I have to be deliberate with our resources and programs. Human Services has some great programs. For example, Office of Neighborhoods is one. It's that dual response in the field for our homeless camps, and addressing not only mental health and housing instability, but those folks that are really suffering from substance use disorder. And so that's one of the things we did right away in January is we added another person to that unit, and I look to grow that. Crisis responders, again, Human Services has some programs that we're looking to help expand. So Snohomish County Prosecutor's Office has the LEAD program, which the Sheriff's Office hasn't participated in the past, which allows for some diversion of some qualifying crimes that helps people get some treatment components. So we need to do all those things. Priority for me, coming back to the Drug Task Force, is working with our area law enforcement partners and having them put bodies back in the task force. All of these things are important. We, we have to keep reassessing what's working, but we have to understand that we're just part of the web, and we need to complement the other resources that are out there. There is no single answer, as you know, and this is very complex, but this is where we're prioritizing our resources and our efforts. And for me personally, it is getting on committees, having a voice, and making sure we're participating where we can and make a difference. But understanding it's not a policing solution, right?
Right, yeah. And speaking of priorities, you touched on just one now, but what are some other priorities of yours going into your first year as sheriff?
I love talking about our priorities. Public safety is pretty easy. I probably don't even need to list that as a priority, but that is our top priority. Mm-hmm. I just been out, as part of a campaign. I spent quite a bit of time out in the community talking to people, and people just don't feel as safe as they used to. So, there's two components for public safety. Obviously, one is the actual crime, and then there's the fear of crime. And both are my responsibility. So it's people feeling safe, and that can be, camps and parks. There's all sorts of things that make us feel less safe. And there are programs that we're already working on implementing. Cops like acronyms, so there's the 3 Ps. So for me, there's a prevention, partnerships, and patrolling is one component of public safety for us. We have a crime prevention team that are aggressively out there doing neighborhood watches and, arming people with the information that they need to keep themselves safer. Some really basic things to reduce them as victims of crime or to be targeted as victims of crime. Partnerships is amazing. So there are some area law enforcement agencies that used to partner with the Sheriff's Office. Last couple of years, those partnerships maybe waned, where these chiefs were very anxious to come and say, hey, I want to re-partner with the Sheriff's Office. Those are going to be great opportunities because it costs our taxpayers nothing, and it helps us leverage those resources. Some examples are just maybe regional property crime units, because property crimes is a big deal, and that is the number one way people actually are victimized, whether it's a car prowl, simple theft, or burglary, and those are big deals. So those are some things we've already put in place. The public safety also includes, behavioral health stuff we've talked about and stepping up resources in those areas. And then additionally in public safety is technology and focusing on violent crime. So working with the Everett Police Department, they've been looking at a grant that we would come on board with them on. I don't want to go into a lot of details because I don't want to curse us, but it's using technology. Yeah, thank you. It's using technology in some areas where we are seeing more violent crime. And sometimes, you got to be cautious of not only limited people's resources, deputy sheriffs on the road, but also that balance with our communities so they don't feel over-policed in areas where especially our communities of color are. So there are some technology options that we're going to be, talking to our community members about. So I'm kind of excited about that. So there's a lot of opportunities there. So public safety, trust and transparency. Third one is employee investment. And then the last one is organizational resiliency. And I don't know how much you want to go into those. I'm happy to if you want, but those are the priorities.
Great. Yeah, I think that's perfect. So I'm sure as sheriff, you've been keeping a keen eye on the legislative session down in Olympia. Are there any bills that you've been acutely following or especially excited to have passed and or implemented?
So you probably know it's a short session.
Yeah.
And I did not get a chance to see which bills flopped over. So, a bill has to make it through the House before it flips to the Senate. I'm not sure if all these made it, but what I would consider top four, there's Senate Bill 5032, if it made it across, is strengthened some of our DUI laws. I think that's always a huge public safety issue. If you still look at statistically, even though we just finished talking about people feel not so safe in our community right now, if you look at the data, we are still a very safe state in the country, and violent crime is still low considering, but we do experience traffic deaths, and DUIs, that's a big deal. So strengthening the DUI laws, I'm interested in that one, I'm following that one. House Bill 2231 was funding for public safety. I'm not sure if that's made it, but that's going to help us with recruiting. You're probably aware, because I learned about you do journalism in the region, that Washington State is 51st out of 50 states as far as the per capita staffing for law enforcement.
Yeah.
And it's only because they consider District of Columbia as one of those. And we pay a lot of money for law and justice here for sure, but if we can find some separate funding to help us with recruiting and retention, I think that's in everybody's best interest, because overall, I think even all of our communities can see that our numbers are low, and I always want to support our folks. House Bill 2311 is wellness and peer support. I think it's obvious why. It takes a long time, and the public has a lot of investment in law enforcement by the time we hire somebody. And that's all of our positions, corrections support staff, and the deputy sheriff people normally relate to. It takes a long time to hire, long time to train. We get them through academy, so you as a community member has a lot of money invested. And what we found is over time, we have not always done a good job of that wellness balance. I think the next generation coming into law enforcement now does a great job of this. They are much better talking about feelings. In some cases, they even have counselors coming in the door. And so one of the things that's important for me is to make sure we have that wellness and peer support, that we continue to do that, because it helps, the people that deal with, honestly, the worst of society at times. We want them to go 25, 30 years, and in a way that still allows them to be compassionate. Because this is the problem that we see. The longer generally people are in this career, the more coarse they become. And sometimes it's coping mechanisms. It's just the facts, sir, right? And compassion is important. And it's not reasonable for that capacity to be there unless I take care of them. And so with this bill, it strengthens peer support and some other attributes, some things that I think we need to do in the profession, which also allows us to do other things. Anytime you have more staffing or better balance, we want people to be rested. We want them to make good decisions. De-escalation is a component in there. So anyway, all those things I'm excited about. The last one is Senate Bill 6157, and that's a civil service change. And this would allow people that are in our country legally, that have work permits, so this could be our DACA or our Dreamers, to be able to be hired by law enforcement. So many states have already made this step in the last few years. I think California, New Jersey, Colorado, and it's a change to the law that would allow those that have a lawful right to be here to serve in law enforcement. They can already serve in corrections and other pieces. Why I think this is important is, first of all, I've encountered a lot of people that would like to come serve. Obviously, the more diverse our representation of the community we serve, the better we serve our community. Not to mention, being able to speak multiple languages is always an attribute for us, and be able to reach those communities that we do need to communicate with well and build relationships with. So this will open the door. It wouldn't require an agency, but it would provide us that opportunity. So I'm excited to watch that one. It also would be a great recruiting tool. I can say as a sheriff, if that tool becomes available, we will be using it here at the sheriff's office.
That would be perfect with filling the gap in staffing that we were just talking about.
That would be.
Steering away from your work as sheriff and just allowing the public to get to know a little bit about you personally, I understand that you're a pretty outdoorsy, big hiker, camper, that sort of thing. So,
yeah.
What are some of your favorite places to hike and camp in Snohomish County?
Snohomish County has some amazing parks. One of the things we actually market about working in Snohomish County is the recreation here. It's amazing, like water to the mountains, right? Over time, I've found glamping. So for day hikes, there's any park you can go to in Snohomish County is amazing. I like Mount Pilchuck personally, but when it comes to camping, so I'm almost embarrassed to say I now have a fifth wheel. I'm a little older now. I like the comforts of dragging my home around with me. So when we go camping, I actually get out of the area a little bit. So I like Lake Easton or Deception Pass. There's certainly plenty of places like in Oregon. I generally will drive a couple hours away and then have a camp for a weekend, and that's kind of nice. You can turn off your cell phone and really decompress, and we'll go for hikes and bring the dogs, and yeah, we love that. And that's what's so lovely about this community. There's just so much to do and recreate, and it's also it's good. We were just talking about wellness, right? Fresh air, exercise, good for my heart, good for my stress. Yeah,
definitely. Have you been doing any winter activities so far, or any snowboarding, skiing?
No, I wish I've done nothing but work and campaign. And I was kind of hoping for the break. What a blessing to be elected, and then rolled right into this, because I worked at the Bothell Police Department all the way up to the December 31st, and then came here. So nothing yet, but soon, once we feel like it's a good time for a break, yeah, I'll get away.
Yeah.
But not yet.
And you have dogs too. How many dogs
I
do you have?
I just have two. It's growing up, I always had shepherds. Love German shepherds. When I was a handler for the sheriff's office, it was for a drug detection dog, and that was a black lab. And so for the most part, the last 20 plus years, I've had labs. I've had all three colors of labs. I love Labradors. I know they're very popular. And then just by happenstance, ended up with a, what am I looking for? Fostering a little dog that needed a home. And it was my first little dog. And over time, of course, this is a sad thing about dogs, they just don't live long enough. So eventually, even my working dog had passed away. He got to retire at home with me. And so I'm left with this little dog. He's, still have him, his name's Dash. And he's a Boston Chihuahua mix. He's black and white, like a Jersey cow. I'm a Disney fan. He's actually got markings on his back that is the Mickey Mouse ears.
Oh, cool.
God wanted us to be together, apparently. And so I needed a partner for him that was his size. So then I also got a mini dachshund. So now I'm a little dog mom. So a Chihuahua mix and a mini dachshund. And I'll say, they fit better on my lap than my 80-pound lab.
Definitely.
So they don't know they're small dogs, so that's fun.
Nice.
That's a lot of fun.
Okay, well, that's all I have for you. Would you like to address the public or tell the public anything, any closing remarks?
Sure. First of all, thank you for this opportunity.
Of course.
Appreciate you coming up to the office today. And I do want to say how much I appreciate and how honored I am to be your elected sheriff. Take the responsibility seriously, and we're going to work very hard for you. And I also want you to know that all of the people that work at the sheriff's office have been working incredibly hard. And staffing is coming up. Morale is great. I was welcomed with open arms. The unions here have been fantastic. And we share common values of what we want to do for our community, and just really excited about what the future holds. So thank you so much, and thank you for this opportunity
Thank
today.
you. Thanks for joining me.
Have a great day.
This has been Keenan Briscoe, senior reporter with the Lynnwood Times. For more content and exclusive interviews, visit www.lynnwoodtimes.com.